a lot of social enterprises taking over from charities, because it's one thing to keep going with your hand out to grant providers and saying, I need to provide this in the community. It's another thing to actually trade something so you can make a profit, which is then ploughed back into your organisation, and you're not so reliant on grant funders.
Yeah.
So there's two very different ways of looking at charity. And obviously having a business background, there's so many different parts of business life that can move into charity life. It's good practice. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at a charitable organisation or a business organisation. Good practice is good practice.
Testing. So we're now on to Paula Woolven, who's going to come and talk to us about her fantastic charity. I do like talking about charities. People often spend a lot of time dealing with them, a lot of their own time, and they get a bit of hard flat for it as well, because people always think there's something in it for them or whatever, but some people just love giving over their time for it. We're going to have a look at Paula. She's got some big visions for her charity and the rest of it, but sometimes she just needs to rein them in and focus a little bit, not get caught in the trap of taking on too much stuff all at once. So if you like the sound of that, keep watching. You'll find out all about Paula's charity, and you'll probably learn a little bit about something about franchising. Right, everybody, we've got Paula Woolven here today, who's going to be talking to us about the Havens and all of the various things that you do there. We're going to have a look at her kind of 1 5-year and 10-year goals for the charity that you're working with and have established. But before we go too much into this, tell us a little bit about everything that you do in a kind of elevator style pitch. Maybe imagine we're going up the Shard rather than the local elevator.
Never been up the Shard. Thank you, Matt. That's a good place to start.
I'll line them up.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I've had a career in local government. I was in Sussex Police. And then I started working for the Body Shop, which introduced me to the charity sector. My mum has always been involved in the charity world anyway. She was awarded the British Empire Medal for long time service. So I had no choice, really. I had some big shoes to step into, and I had to do that. And then I was given the opportunity to sort of step back from my job a little bit and do what I really loved. And I realised that I really wanted to run a community hub. And I wanted to help the community that I'd grown up in, lived in. I was born in New Haven, now live in Telscombe. And I wanted to make sure that other charities survive, and also that projects are created where there's a gap in community provision and it's not being met. I wanted to make sure that there was something created and make our communities better. So I became a social entrepreneur.
Yeah, brilliant. So what actually does the community, what do you do? Like, I know I know what you do. Tell the audience what you do.
Of course you know what I do, dear.
Yeah.
So Havens Community Hub, really, we find a way, we make a way. And that is, is a real bullish way of kind of saying, we're not going to just put up with there being nothing there.
Yeah.
Either there's organisations already out there that need support to improve community infrastructure, and we help them, or if we have to, and this is our last resort, but we've done it successfully 3 times already, we create a project with and for the community. And it's not supposed to be empire building. Havens Community Hub isn't to control that project. So, for example, I'll give you the first one. We knew there was no volunteer driver scheme in the area. So we launched Havens Community Cars.
Yeah.
And within 2 years, that became a standalone charity. It's now a CIO, which is a completely charitable organisation that is, community and charity funded. Whereas a CIC, which is the hub, is a not-for-profit business. So it's a CIC, community interest company. There's 2 slightly different ways of looking at a charitable institution. And I think before COVID, we were looking at a lot of social enterprises taking over from charities, because it's one thing to keep going with your hand out to grant providers and saying, I need to provide this in the community. It's another thing to actually trade something so you can make a profit, which is then ploughed back into your organisation, and you're not so reliant on grant funders.
Yeah.
So there's 2 very different ways of looking at charity. And obviously having a business background, and I did sort of go through multi-level marketing with Anita Roddick in the Body Shop, there's so many different parts of business life that can move into charity life. It's good practice. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at a charitable organisation or a business organisation. Good practice is good practice. Yeah. So the CARS scheme did thrive.
Yeah.
We've got 600 members that we have 35 drivers supporting out in the community, getting people to hospital, getting them shopping, all sorts of things, all volunteers. Yeah. It's lovely. I do it as well. That was one of my ethoses right from the beginning, is I did not want to step right away from the front line, no matter how big the organisation got. And honestly, when starting in my garage 6 years ago with a desk that was actually a pool table with a sheet of wood on it, a phone and a bank account with £10 in it, I honestly had no idea 6 years later I'd be sitting here telling you that I've now got 3 charities and a CIC organisation. We are the fastest growing community support organisation in the district, and probably in a wider area as well. So that worked, and CARS is its own charity, although we're still involved in supporting it. And it was actually nominated. It's shown itself to be an organisation of excellence so much, and that whole ethos of being good. That's a bit wet, wasn't it? Being good. Whole ethos of being, achieving more than anybody thought we possibly could. That we were nominated for the King's Award for Voluntary Service this year, and we'll find out in November whether or not we have been awarded that, which is brilliant. So, and again, that's for the volunteers and the people that run the organisation. Then Age UK pulled out of providing dementia care support in this area, which we couldn't stand by and see happen. So I started up Havens Happy Clubs. We now have 3 of them in the area. And was it this January or last January? I can't remember. But they became independent. They're now independently run. They are a charity in their own right. And the third and probably most well-known one that I've started over the last 5-6 years is Havens Food Cooperative.
Yeah.
And that is the organisation
probably where
that
most people know
know me from. I found out during lockdown that supermarkets threw away their leftover produce at the end of the day. Only by chance saw a young lad in the supermarket putting stuff in boxes, and I said, because I do frequent the yellow sticker aisle, is where the good bargains are to be had. And he's put all this stuff in a box.
You're one of those ones that pushes the staff out of the way when they're trying to stick the label on.
What's in there? And he was putting all this in. And I said, is it going to the local food bank? And he said, oh, no, because the food banks only open once a week for a couple of hours. So this perishable food, although it's good today, tomorrow, maybe the next day, it's not going to be good next Thursday. And they've got nowhere to store it either. Yeah. And I said, well, how many of you shops in this area are doing this? And he said, all of us.
Yeah.
Which was hideous.
Yeah.
And I thought, my goodness, there was just boxes and boxes of food.
Yeah.
So sort of long story short, move on, 3 years since the pandemic, and we have just achieved £1 million worth of food prevented from going to landfill and given out to the community free of charge.
Yeah.
It hasn't achieved its own charity status at the moment because it is so big, it needs quite a few of us to run it. But we are aiming sort of by the end of the year to get that process started. Yeah. And that'll be my 3rd charity baby launched and flying. So the main part, the hub, that's really the consultation, it's like the incubator.
Yeah.
It's like the sourdough starter of where projects come out. But also, we're so well known in the area that other organisations come to us when they have issues. And the issues are always the same. And these issues are probably the same as within business, funding and people.
Yeah.
It's always the same.
Yeah.
That's when you look at life, it's money and people.
Cash and staff.
If only we didn't have to put up with money and people, everything would be easy, wouldn't it? So, every organisation that comes to us always has those.
Yeah.
The root of their issues always boil down to the people and the money.
Yeah.
But being a social entrepreneur, that's great, isn't it? It like I say, you bring in your basic business skills.
Yeah.
And as with anything in life, the soft skills you learn as a business person will actually see you good through everything.
Definitely, and I think I know some of our staff have assisted with the food prevention waste stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, I think I joined them on one or two trips out.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, seeing the amount of food and also the amount of people in need of the service as well, queuing up, in fact, before you've even opened.
Oh yeah.
You know, and not means tested either, so you don't have to
there's no
anything.
Stigma attached to it, because the food that we're collecting, it would have gone to landfill. It's waste food. So actually, when we started, and still now, we're more of an environmental program. We're not a food bank. We never aimed to be a food bank, because food banks, people that are in very dire situations, need a regular donation of non-perishable foods more than anything, and we pick up perishable foods that would have been wasted. Yeah. So for us, it was, as long as it's being used, we're doing our environmental good.
Exactly, yeah.
I think something like 18% of all the environmental gases that are coming out of the UK at the moment are landfill food that is being chucked away.
Doesn't surprise me.
It's millions. It produces a different kind of gas in landfill. It's this rotting methane gas, and it's 20 times more damaging to the ozone layer, rotting food, than anything else. So every week we save about 3 tons of perishable food from being thrown away. But I mean, obviously the knock-on effect from that is we were able to prioritise a few people as well. Yeah. Because we would give it at the start, it was just me and my car going around 2 or 3 shops, making up some bags of food and dropping it on the doorsteps of people that I knew could do with it. You know, they used to call me the food fairy. I'd go, ding dong, food fairy. And I'd drop some food on the doorstep. And then it became bigger and more shops wanted to get on board. Now we have all 19 stores between Saltdean and Seaford are on board.
Brilliant.
And it's amazing. And the colleagues at all of those.
On board before, weren't they?
I got 18 out of the 19. Yeah. So here's where my sort of business persona came into play. Yeah. So we tried to get the last store. I won't name them, but I tried to get the last store for about a year. They resisted us. They kept saying it was national policy from head office that they couldn't give their food away and that kind of thing.
Corporate response.
So yeah, absolutely. Now, I have learned to deal with people over the years with different businesses, and I asked to see the manager. I was a bit of a Karen. I'm sorry. I said, hello, I'm Paula, but I'm Karen. And I said to them, tomorrow I'm going to put out a press release saying that 18 of the 19 supermarkets in the Havens area have helped us achieve £1 million of saved food. Yeah. And I'm going to name the 19th supermarket that unfortunately hasn't come on board. And he looked at me and went, is it me? And I said, yeah, it's you. Yeah. So I would love to go out tomorrow and say all 19 supermarkets are part of this organisation. Weirdly enough,
they joined
the next day joined up. And they've been on board since. And do you know what? They're one of the biggest supermarkets that support us now. Yeah. But it just took the right way in. Exactly. Sometimes, I mean, you must know there must be organisations that you've helped and dealt with and taken over that you've approached at the wrong time, or you've approached in the wrong way, and you know.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes that personal touch. I mean, I think a previous podcast guest I've said about trying to get in front of somebody that you want to get in front of, and they're like, oh, we send them emails, we do this, we send them a pen in the post or something.
Nice.
And I was like, why don't, I mean, someone said to me once, I literally wrapped up a shoe in a box and sent it to someone like a foot in the door. And of course, because it's a big parcel, it was like, oh, what's this? So they actually opened it, and then obviously you've now essentially got your foot in the door because you posted them a shoe. Now, obviously, that's quite extreme, but actually, those bigger parcels do tend to get open. I'd open a bigger parcel.
It's not that extreme. Shall I tell you a silly story?
Go on in.
So, I like yourself. My work is I live it all the time. Yeah. You know, you're never really switched off. When it's your own organisation, it's just part of you. It's like your left foot. Yeah, it is part of you. You never switch off. But when I do try and switch off, obviously you've told me you do a little bit of tinkling on the piano, which I hope you wipe it off afterwards. And what I do is I like to write some scripts, some TV comedy scripts, because like I say, I did work with Anita Roddick in the Body Shop, and some of the stuff that happened, it was like Anne Summers parties, but without the buzzy things. I actually sold lipsticks and not the other things.
Yeah.
I mean, the girls that sold Anne Summers, to be honest, outsold me 20 to 1. So that just says a lot about direct marketing. But I wrote a script about some of these party plan girls that I'd met over the years. And I knew that if I sent it to a publisher or an agent, it would never get read.
Yeah.
So I dressed as an Amazon delivery driver, put it in a box with some goodies and sweets, and I took it to a producer, knocked on his door, and handed it to him like I was a delivery driver. I said, "Oh, will you?" And he went, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, have a great day." And handed it over. I said, "Thanks." Didn't make him sign for it. Should have done. That would have been more authentic, wouldn't it? So it's not that mad to go to some lengths to get in front of somebody.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really, really good message for a lot of people because they'll try all those traditional things and they don't really. I have a policy on my thing where if it's not important, it just gets deleted or marked as unread because the thing is at the end of the day, you haven't got the time to look at every single offer, junk mail, bit and bobs. You know, if I want something, I'll come to you. Is the attitude.
Absolutely. Your network is absolutely your bread and butter.
Yeah.
The people that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, in person or on the phone if you have to, but who develops a relationship with an email or a letter?
Yeah.
Nobody.
No. Right. We'll move on, I suppose, to your kind of goals, I suppose, to where you want to go in the next kind of 1 to 10 years. So we've got down here, right, I'll start with the 1 year goal at the bottom here. Short-term goals is to get your newest project off the ground. And hope by the time you're on this podcast, I'll be able to give you an exciting update. So we'll have that in a minute. In 3 to 5 years' time, I anticipate the hub's rapidly evolving models of direct impact will, with longer term actions, to be franchised. So we've got some experience with franchising, which we can talk about. And then in 10 years' time, I hope that the government and local authorities have effectively got their act together sufficiently that charities, social enterprises are not needed to provide a safety net for communities, so your and community cohesion rather than dire emergencies. I live in hope.
I do live in hope. I mean, I have to, otherwise.
Alien emoji or something.
An alien emoji, probably. I don't know what
an emoji or something actually at the end.
So, I mean, you know, what I provide, I get asked all the time, why the government, why local authorities, why health authorities not providing it. And it boils down to money. They haven't got enough money to provide everything. And it doesn't matter who's in government, who's in local authority, who's running the NHS. They have a finite amount of money. It's not infinite that they can play with. And they decide where that money is put and hopefully not wasted. But some of the things that charity has been looked towards to fill over the last few years has been really basic needs. I mean, food, rent, electricity. I mean, these are things that government should be looking long term and local authorities to help people, because the society is only judged by how we treat the most vulnerable. And, you know, how are they doing at the moment? In fact, since COVID and since the cost of living, what we've found is it's not the people you traditionally would think are in need are actually coming forward for help. It's actually working families on very low income that haven't got enough to meet the bills month to month. Now, the trouble is with that is there's so much new stigma. If you've always come from I come from a hardy council estate stock. You know, my families have been on benefits in the past. But people who've moved away from that or have never had to claim a benefit or seek support, the stigma and actually what to do is quite horrific.
There is a massive stigma. I mean, we actually come from, like, when we were students, you know, we had 2 young kids and we couldn't afford to pay for everything. So we had, you know, some help from the government and the rest of it. I can't remember the exact ones that we had, but we had a handful of them. And obviously we bettered ourselves to get out better. We elevated ourselves. You
improved your life.
Improved my life to get to a stage where we weren't reliant upon that. And I'm a strong believer of those systems are there in order to support people, not be reliant upon them, but actually to elevate you. I think you mentioned it, and you've written it 3 times down under what your biggest challenges are. Is funding.
Funding. And it's the same business or charity. It's funding. So that's why I said to you about social enterprises being a more sustainable model for charity, because you can trade, you can use your skills, you can use products. So things like community supermarkets, things like contracts with local authorities, even down to the NHS bought my skills for a little project they were looking at recently about getting people out of hospital and stopping bed blocking, getting them home. And one of the main problems with that was the transport to get them there. I mean, it's silly, you think they'd be able to overcome that, but there was that. And obviously they wanted to start a project on getting people home and really reinstalling them. So they bought my skills, and I did a whole research piece about how I thought the NHS could work with charities. Now, the money from that obviously goes straight into my charitable organisation to pay our bills. So there are all sorts of things that you can levy as, but then obviously with charities, one of the biggest things is writing grant bids. And we've got to write to governments, we've got to write to local authorities, we've got to write to, I don't know, the Paul Daniels Magic Trust or whatever, anybody that's left money in trust. I don't know why I went with Paul Daniels. They've probably got magic wands, we would magic it all up. It'll be fine. So funding is a massive problem, which is why I always try and look at a social enterprise model, which is where you can, trade whatever it is that you have. It's a far more sustainable way of doing it. Too many organisations I've seen that are basically charities rely on the handouts from their funders all the time. And one that's just gone under recently, which is horrific, it was called No Dementia, KNOW, as in no dementia. They were funded by the NHS for the last 9 years, fully funded, and didn't have to fundraise hardly at all to provide the services in the community for people with dementia. This year, by the 31st of March, the NHS decided that money was better off somewhere else. And it literally yanked the money last minute from it. It's like the
reverse equivalent of having like one customer making
exactly
up too much of your business.
Yeah, and then that customer falls out with you and they disappear. What do you do? Well, what happened, unfortunately, with No Dementia is they closed. They closed the doors almost overnight. So
I suppose 2 things that strike out to me about your kind of long-term plans. You mentioned about franchising and obviously funding. So I presume the goal is for you to reach a sustainable bit where you've got the funding in place, like it's regular, and then teach other people how to almost franchise that out so that it can be like a nationwide. So I guess the first port of call would be the funding, obviously, because then you can go on to do the franchising. With the funding, obviously, you get the grants, which you can apply for and the rest of it. And I'm sure you get a drip feed of donations and the rest of it. What about, it strikes me like another, a source of income like that's regular would be if you've got businesses and various other charities or other parties to make like a commitment donation or something like that. I don't know if you run anything like that. So I see that quite a lot with charities. We do pay like £100 a month, and you're given like a bronze badge as a business. Like, we're committed to continuously supporting you, not just like we'll raise £100 for you at a charity.
What are you picturing me here, Mel? What do you want, mate? What are we talking here? How much? What do you want for how much?
Well, we'll see. We'll have a chat off there. But basically, you must know WOLO, the charity for the cancer.
They came to us when they were starting up, Fleur and Justin, and I went through, because that's one of the things the Hub does, is it goes through with organisations, whether they're in the right structure at the moment, and also people that want to start charities. So I went through with Fleur all the things that I do. The thing with WOLO, there's a social enterprise for you. A lot of their funding, I think Justin is PR and marketing. Fantastic PR and marketing. They have a whole range of products that you can buy with their logo, and they make money and it goes back into the charity. So his skill in doing that is fantastic. And also it's a good call. Everybody's touched by cancer in one way or another. They say 1 in 2 of us will be touched by cancer in our lifetimes. So it's something that everybody sort of wants to be involved with. But yet there are still charities involved with cancer that are not run, you know, well or in the same way. So,
but I think that way, doing those sort of things would then get it to be more sustainable, which should then work with a franchise.
We do.
model.
So what we do is I'm quite good at something called crowdfunding.
Yeah.
And what crowdfunding does, it obviously, you know, gives you the opportunity to raise for a cause. But at the moment and over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, there's been quite a lot of providers of funding who don't want the hassle of looking out for charities to support or going all through grants, because grants are 12 to 1. You know, if there's £1,000 to give out, they'll be asked for £12,000 in applications. And it's a big admin ask for a funder as well. So what a lot of people have decided to do, especially larger organisations, is they say to charities, and again, it's to teach charities to raise funds for themselves. In crowdfunding, we'll match fund. So if you can raise £1, we'll match it with £1. And lots of people have done this. Loads of businesses. Aviva at the moment is one of the big ones at the moment giving out money.
Yeah.
And coming back to we'll talk about my latest project in a moment. I actually raised the funds to do that through a crowdfunding project. And I actually managed to match 3 match funders, because you can have more than one on at a time. So for every £1 that was given, I was getting £4.
Yeah. No,
so when you
really
go
good.
out to people, so I went, we're members of all the chambers of commerce locally. And again, businesses or charities, it's about networking.
Yeah.
You know, if anyone doesn't see the benefits of networking, then they're not doing it correctly. We go to all the chambers of commerce, we go to BNI. And we get a lot of lovely support from local businesses. Obviously, your staff, especially the wonderful Vicky Novis, who is just one of my favourite people in the world, has helped us from word go with the food cooperative. And businesses are quite happy if you go to them every now and again and you say, I've got a match funding project on the go.
Yeah. And
Aviva and various other people have said they will match this funding.
Yeah.
If you give me £150, I will get 600.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, £150 if I was asking out of your pocket now seems a bit okay. But if you know that I'm going to get 600 because you've just given me 150, would you say no?
I guess I love your passion and your enthusiasm for it, but therein lies the problem for me. In terms of trying to franchise it and getting it across because there are not 27 Paula's in all of the different districts.
There are.
If you're going to try and franchise it, it has to be like a really, like tight business model essentially, so that when Paula that's in Birmingham, not picking on Birmingham in particular, there's loads of other cities in the UK before someone slates me, but Paula in Birmingham might not have the same passion and drive or ability to crowd fund or whatever as you. So that's where you have to have like a really solid system that is reliant upon not reliant upon continuously having that skill set of like gift of the gab and like that you talk about your story about the shop floor manager. A lot of people wouldn't have that in them. So if and therefore with the funding thing, if you can come up with a system that's a little bit more sustainable as you grow, as in like if you don't find a Paula in Birmingham, for instance, then that will actually allow the franchise model to work. Otherwise, what you run the risk of, or potentially run the risk of, is that someone in Birmingham will take it, but they don't have the same drive as you, and it'll be a flop because they need that kind of energy and pizzazz if you're going to grow it the same way you have.
It can be a really thankless task to run a charity or a good cause, because no matter how pure your intention, there will always be a suspicion of why you're doing something. I mean, I've outright been asked to my face, what's in it for you? Yeah. And people look at me and think, well, she must be getting something fantastic out of it to put herself through this. And there is a lot of suspicion, unfortunately, in the press recently with things like Captain Tom's daughter being in the press. The kids club that was a great big scandal, and that was proved to be mostly malicious in the end, which was a real shame because it brought down a charity. I think if you didn't have the passion for it, you wouldn't do it. It's the same way as anyone's got a passion project, they wouldn't do it. But I also have a toolkit, right? Yeah. So I have a toolkit, and I have
lots of passion, but not actually going to implement it.
No, I have a toolkit, and I have a fundraising strategy, and I have all of these things whereby I talk people through the basics.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've almost kind of taken 20 years of doing what I do and put it into a small toolkit that I can do. There is a Havens Food Cooperative in Heathfield.
Okay.
There is one in Birmingham, and there is one in Manchester, weirdly enough. And they were run by people. They're all run by people who've come down and lived in this area, seen what we do, gone away, and then they've come back for 3 days and they've restarted it in their area.
Right.
So I've seen that it can work.
Yeah. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast today, and it's been a really, really good listen so far. But if you want to get on this podcast and come on the show, it's totally and utterly 100% free. All you have to do is come into the podcast studio, sit down, we film it for YouTube, and then we also make an audio file for Spotify, Apple, all those streaming services. What you need to do is head over to our website, www.matthewcox, that's Matthew with 2 T's, .biz. So it's matthewcox.biz. There's a preloaded form on there. Fill that in, apply to be on the podcast. We'll get back to you within a few days, get you booked in, we'll get you on here, and then we'll sort out your goals and your achievements. Back to the podcast. So with the franchising stuff, obviously I just would be keen for you to get it into like a model that you can franchise off to, to various other people, because it is really difficult to replicate you as a person as you go.
Definitely.
And I
don't think that the world needs two of me, to be honest, Matt.
Well, I think the world needs more of you, actually. That's the sad thing about it. But I mean, if you, I think we were talking about it in the break, if you watch the film The Founder, which is about McDonald's and how their franchise was really difficult to actually get off the ground to start with. And that gives you some idea of the problems as you franchise it, because people think that they can just take what they've done, replicate it over here, replicate it over there, and it is inherently difficult unless you've got like really, really good structures. I'm sure, I mean, there was some local funding actually, which I think we've got some leaflets in the other room, which would be bound to qualify for, that's provided by East Sussex County Council, and they're a panel of business like experts, if you like, in different industries. One of them is franchising. Julia is actually on there as well.
So is that the it's not like Dragon's Den, but it was almost like Dragon's Den. I'm trying to think what it was. It was like a Kickstarter type thing that they run all the time. Every year they run it.
I don't know if they run it every year, but basically it's 20 hours or something like that of so much free business mentoring.
Oh, right. It's not the same one.
It's in a specific area. So like Julia Johnson, who you probably know from Fine Marketing, she's the person that deals with website and e-commerce on the panel, if you like. And then there are other people that deal with things. They asked me about mergers and acquisitions, like for business owners that wanted to get involved with that. So you can go and you can just be there. But I'm sure there was a franchise person on that panel.
They do every year. It might be Lewis District Council actually do like a Dragon's Den type competition.
Right, okay.
In recent years, one of the winners was Patchwork Cat in the town. And basically you go along and you pitch an idea. And then you have 6 weeks of coaching and business development. People sort of drop out or get knocked out during the way. And then at the end, there's 3 finalists.
Right,
and they fund the one that they think is going to be the best new enterprise. Just to I'm going to look like a complete... I got dragged along to one of these. I think maybe the first one about 5-6 years ago by a friend who had an idea for a business. Now, thought I was only going along to sit with her while she pitched her idea. And I sat down and they said to me, right, so what's your idea? Out of the blue. And it happened really quickly. And, everybody's here now, let's start. And I'm thinking, okay. And I didn't have an idea for a business. But I felt so silly saying I only came with her that I said, and they said, you've got to give your business a 3 word strapline, right? And they went
Yeah.
round and somebody went, desserts by post, which
Yeah.
actually is a thing now.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not the person who...
Yeah.
And they got round to me and I went, spray-on gloves. And I stopped and I'm looking around at people and then they all started clapping. And it was the weirdest thing. They were going, that is a brilliant idea. Tell us what you... And I said, well, you know, when my kids were little and they would lose a mitten and I'd think, oh, no, and then I'd string the mittens through and then they'd lose both mittens. I thought, spray on gloves. So you've got gloves in a can and you spray it on and then at the end you just peel it off and throw it away.
Yeah.
And they actually thought it was a real idea and I got a standing ovation for it. And they wanted to put me through, but only trouble was didn't have a product.
No.
I then started thinking,
like,
maybe I should make a product. And then I was thinking maybe spray on shoes. And then someone said to me, what if they were edible? So when you peeled them off, you could eat them. So
edible shoes.
I have done one of these sort of dragon den type things.
Well,
and I said, spray on gloves.
It's not like that. It's literally just one-on-one time.
Yeah, it's the coaching one.
Probably be worth
really good.
worth doing that. It's free. And I'm sure there's got a franchising person. If not, there'll be someone in a business bit of it that will have some idea of franchising. So that would probably help a bit.
Would you like to invest in spray-on gloves?
We invest in many things, but we like vertical integration. I'm not sure spray-on gloves vertically integrates anywhere in that lot, but
spray-on masonry, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So yeah, I think I definitely would look at that. That I foresee is a problem with anybody trying to do franchising of any nature. And obviously you can talk to me about your latest venture in a minute.
Yes.
But you've got a lot of ventures and it would probably be good to pick the one that is easiest to franchise out and then work with that model and then add those bolt-ons at a later date.
Definitely and I wouldn't franchise the individual parts of it because obviously what I created here with the cars, with the happy clubs, with the food, it was needed in this area.
Yeah.
But if you went anywhere else, if you went to Devon and Dorset, for example, there are volunteer driver schemes coming out your ears.
Yeah.
There's about 17 in one area. We didn't have any. So obviously the cars project wouldn't work down there. But the hub's whole ethos is we create the projects that are missing. And the same with yourself. I mean, obviously you've branched into other organisations. I know you're property management, but
so we've done lots of other things, but they are all very similar. A bit like they're all stems of a charity in some nature or another. We do business outsourcing, we do the property management, building surveying, but they're all linked together because they're all like services that assist businesses, property owners, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and they all.
I'm more thinking that, say, like, I'm not picking on people in Lewes, but people in Lewes are probably, as a demographic, less likely to need the food bank.
Yeah, although there are 4 food banks in Lewes, weirdly enough. But you're right. That each area would decide. I mean, the hub's model is we find a way or we make a way. And what is that way? Well, what is the need? And it's from ground up. And it's the same way as if you were starting a business and you're looking at your potential clients, your customers, your demographic, your competition. Charities and social enterprises have to look at the same thing.
Yeah.
Because if there's another charity down the road doing what I think is missing in the community, then my idea is not to create a charity to be in competition with them. What's the point of that? You can see where the gaps are.
Yeah.
And obviously there are food banks, there are community supermarkets. There was nobody collecting waste food from the supermarkets at night. Yeah. But it's still fitted within that, whole food umbrella. Yeah. But we're certainly not a food bank or a community supermarket. Okay.
So tell us about your latest venture and where that kind of fits into all of this. The latest
one. So as I said, one of the things we do is we look at and we get approached a lot by organisations, by social enterprises, by charities who either want to make sure that they're doing it right or that they're having one of those two problems, finance and people. And it always comes down to that. Volunteers, governance, finance, trustees and that kind of thing. So they'll come to us and we will work with them to try and make it a better, solve any problems that they've got and then make it a sustainable organisation. Sometimes, unfortunately, they come to us too late and that doesn't work. Sometimes they don't come to us at all, and we just hear of closures of local charities, which I have obviously recently. But we were working with a local organisation called the Hillcrest, and they wanted to improve the longevity of the building, which is a Victorian school, which has been there for a very long time. It was a thriving community hub. And when Joan and Peter, who ran it for 21 years, and I think they've got an OBE or an MBE or something, rightly so, for all their years of charitable work. When they retired and took a well-deserved retirement, the skill set of the trustees coming in perhaps wasn't enough to bring in a lot of funding. So we went in to see whether we could help with governance, whether we could advise on finance. Now I'm working with a guy there called Brian, who's their fundraiser, he's brilliant, and try and bring this in. But one of the things we identified was the centre, the heart of the centre was its cafe, its community cafe. And it has been closed or on and off for quite some time since Peter and Joan left. Yeah. They couldn't find the right model to get it reopened using volunteers. Or a franchise coming in and buying a lease there. So we floated the idea to them that we could come in and reopen their community cafe for them, get it up and running again. And, even they might take it back over themselves to run it. But we would run it as a community cafe, but also have support services there. So when people come to that cafe, if they need to talk to somebody from the CAB, if they needed to talk to someone about, food insecurity, transport, money worries, we would have a whole wraparound support hub there as well as the cafe, so that there was no wrong door for somebody to go to. I mean, you can imagine people used to have one problem, money or divorce or whatever. They'd have one problem, they'd go look for help for it. With what's happened to us over the last few years, people generally have 7 problems to deal with. Food insecurity, no transport, problems at home, money worry. It's, and they have to go to all different people to get signposted to different things. So we really believe in a more holistic approach of providing loads of people to help the person so that there is no wrong door. And that's my idea, really. So we are opening the cafe from the 5th of August at the Hillcrest Centre in New Haven. It's going to be a small provision at first. We're going to have sandwiches, jacket potatoes. We're recruiting a cafe manager who's going to come in from September and make it lovely and have a bit more variety in there. But I think at the moment, to really make the Hillcrest thriving again, that cafe's got to be open. And, that's what we do. We see a gap in the community and we go in and we say, let's fill that gap. And that's what we're going to be doing. So I expect you to come up and have a jacket potato and a cup of tea with me. I mean, you know I came last on Come Dine With Me, right? Yeah. I won't be cooking. I can just say this right now. I'm saying this right now. It ain't going to be me cooking because I'm terrible. But I can make a mean cup of tea. I'm going to have a chef in there, so that's fine.
No, that's really good, and I think it's a good bit of kind of integration. Like from a business point of view, like you mentioned about what we do, they are all kind of interlinking companies. Like we wouldn't go and buy a coffee shop, for instance. It's not really our kind. I don't know that particular market we would be investing. Sometimes you can do the marketing side. We're good at that, but we're not good. I don't know about like the actual dynamics of how you get physical customers in and the rest of it from a mass point of view. But it doesn't fit with the existing part of the the so I can't pull upon all the other parts. So those sort of things are quite good because you can put on. Exactly. So if somebody's there, it is going to be a community cafe. There may be people there seeking help. There may be people there dropped in for a cup of tea or coffee. There used to be the old, I won't say the word, but that's what they used to call themselves, the old table, and it was widowed old boys who'd come in and have lunch together, and they made friendships, and they ended up coming in every day for lunch, and they would then use some of the other services at the Hillcrest Centre. So I think when you're looking at community development and support, like anything, like you say, if it's businesses, it's got to fit together. And luckily, all of my charitable organisations and my social enterprises, they all fit together, except spray-on gloves. There was never any. No spray-on.
I never went with that in the end. I wish I did.
Maybe you could pitch that to Stephen Bartlett.
Maybe one day. It would be good.
When he goes on Dragon's Den.
I
think it's really good and all the rest of it. But as I said, I think just to kind of summarise the conversation, really, I suppose there's two things really. The franchise model, make sure that you kind of come up with a model that's gonna be scalable. It is inherently difficult to replicate yourself. This business or a charitable business is extremely hard for you to replicate because every area will be different. So maybe really take some time to think about that model when you're going to kind of do that. And then the other thing, there's never any harm in also having a personal brand for yourself. I'm sure you probably have some personal branding arrangements in place, but if not, they are always good because then people see you as the ambassador of what you're doing.
For me, oh my goodness.
You personally, as in Paula the person.
Paula the person is a little bit wacky and out there. I mean, nobody else really would think of advertising a charitable service by going on Come Dine With Me and using leftover food. I think you have to think out of the box a little bit, and I think sometimes I'm a little bit scared. Am I scary? Matt?
I don't think you're scary. I think you've got like an entertaining type background and that kind of ethos to you and persona, but I think you should pull upon that a little bit more in order to help your charities. You know, if you had your own stuff, like this channel, for instance, is to some degree a little bit about personal branding for myself. So people can see me in a human light and you know, get to know me a little bit more, and these conversations and the rest of it, and various other things that we do on the channel. And I think if you did something similar, you know, for yourself, like you could almost have like, you know, your Havens social media type stuff, but then your own, not your personal Facebook profile, but your actual you as a person.
The head of the organisation and what.
I think that would be good. Don't get drawn into it becoming the Paula show too much, because then people are always constantly contacting you and maybe not going for your team. But as you franchise it, it's like people will be like, oh, it's inspirational. I'm forgetting the lady's name, but you talk about the body shop.
Oh, Anita Roddick.
Anita Roddick, sorry. You know, she's a celebrity, not a celebrity, but she is a celebrity, you know, has her own personal brand about herself. And yet there is a big franchise or a series of shops of the Body Shop. So as you grow, it's like people will connect with the fact that that is how the person that's at the top of the chain is perceived, and we should act and behave like that. And they'll see you being like going into the local supermarket and badgering the manager to become the 19th person, and that will inspire them a little bit to do that kind of stuff. So those wealth of stories, if you can pull upon those for your personal brand, I think that would definitely do you quite well.
That's a great
idea. As you grow.
It's scary too though, because I do some odd things.
But I think that it makes you different. You could potentially be very good on like things like shorts and TikTok and stuff like that, because it's this fast-paced world. People like all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I'm 150% ADHD. I was late diagnosed with it, and it although I don't want to give myself a label, and a lot of, you know, there's a lot of comedians that talk about an ADHD diagnosis, a lot of people who do. Being neurodiverse in a business world, in a working world, it is quite difficult. It has helped me because I don't think anybody that is neurotypical with a straight, you know, solid, focused brain would take on 4 charities at once. Not just do the hub, but take on all the projects that it creates, you know. So my brain allowed me to do that. But what I had to do after a little while was realise that I couldn't follow through on every thing that I was trying to do all by myself because I was being all little passionate and creative about it. So I brought in people who are really good at dotting the I and crossing the T. Dawn and Jackie, my admin team, who will literally say, right, stop. What does that look like? What does spray-on gloves look like? How do we get the product? Have you thought about marketing? Have you thought about being sued when someone eats it and gets, you know, stomach poisoning?
Sprays it in there.
Sprays it out and does that. Have you thought about it? I mean, I used to do theatre. You're right about my entertaining background. I used to teach musical theatre for kids, and something I'd really love to go back and do again one day. But you know, I would come up with the idea, and I had a producer, Michaela, who now runs our Happy Clubs, and I would shout, I want a unicorn in the pantomime. She'd, oh, what do you mean I want a unicorn? I want one of those little ponies, and I want you to stick a horn on it, and I want you to make sure that it doesn't... Now, I couldn't do that. I came up with the idea.
Yeah.
So we have a little joke between us because that was sort of 20 years ago now, and I still every sort of Christmas panto time ask her, "Where's my unicorn?" And I think, you know, if you do have a lot of ideas and you do have limitations, you have to have the backup behind you. What's the size of your team now? It must be quite.
We're on about 35 people.
Wow! And you've got layers of management within that.
Definitely, So. And I think that level of protection that you're on about, that, you know, you are the brand, but you can't be everywhere. No. And that ADHD, dyslexia, all those kind of things, I think there's loads of books on it. But a lot of people nowadays realise that actually those things are a superpower. Where you're not very good at X, Y, Z. I mean, we talked about it in the break, actually, that with the piano that I tried to learn, I'm not very good with the alphabet. I prefer numbers, which feeds into my dyslexia and stuff like that. It allows you to hyper focus on things and do one or two things like really well. But the successful people normally have that ability in them, so they're probably on the spectrum somewhere, but they realise very early on that leverage of other people's skills is really important. So 100%. You can go off and get somebody to be your CFO if you don't know how to bookkeep or whatever, or do your accounts. If you can't read or write, or you're not particularly good at spelling and grammar, then get a VA in or a PA or something like that to assist you with those roles, because your skill set is much better doing the thing that you're really good at, which is hyper focusing on something or having the energy and the passion, but then you need someone to take your ideas and then make them work,
absolutely.
Turn them into
make sure that
dream.
it's
and some people don't want to be in front of the camera, and they're quite happy in front of doing the behind the scenes work. I say in front of the camera, but like more philosophical, being the leader. So I think that's really important for people and an important lesson. But definitely I would look at working on your own personal brand, because I think if you do franchise it, and then that's going to help those people that are, say, up in Birmingham in our example, and they're like, I can still see Paula's not this like person that came in, I got a franchise and not too sure how it works, I haven't got the passion, but they can then follow you and seeing you're almost like the figurehead of the franchise.
And it's always back to basics. There's so many different ways that you can fundraise for charity, so many ways you can sell for a business. And when you listen to people's experience, the people that have tried and failed have actually got that experience. I always say I'll never lose. I might not win, but I'll never lose, because even if I haven't achieved the thing I wanted to achieve, I've learned from that mistake. I've learned that experience. I love training courses. When people say they've been on training courses for 20 years, I'm not doing another one, I think, my goodness, even if I go to a training course I've heard before and I hear one new idea, one new spark that can make me... I mean, I walked into that supermarket during lockdown and I saw the lad putting the stuff in the baskets. If I hadn't gone at that time and seen that boy, the food cooperative wouldn't have happened, and over £1 million of food would not be in people's bellies, it would be in landfill. So you always got to look for that one spark, that one opportunity. And that comes back again and again: networking, personal contacts. I mean,
but
my
I
mother
think your
used to say,
network is good when you have your personal brand, because if it's not local, networking's kind of okay local, but you can't go and network in Birmingham, for example. That's very difficult.
Oh, don't you set me a challenge, Matthew.
I feel like you will go off and do
challenge.
that.
I would do that.
You're like a rabbit in the...
I would be like, what's this? This is new. This is new. Can I do
But when you're in Birmingham doing that, you're missing out on something.
Exactly. And we are, I mean, Havens Community Hub is all about local. It's salt into seafood, where we are now. And, I hope that people kind of look at our model and think it's been successful. When I first came out with this upside down model of community development, starting with the problem rather than trying to find funding and then the problem, when people said to me it won't work. I mean, it's the worst thing you can say to me, because it's not going to work. The lad that was putting the food away, I said, why has nobody ever picked this up? He said, well, they've tried, but nobody can do it. And I went... don't tell me that something can't be done, because I'll make sure that it can be. Fine.
Well, that really, really interesting. And thank you for coming on. Did you have any questions at all, or anything you wanted to ask me or whatever? Or
what charity would you start? What need do you see in the community that isn't being met at the moment?
Well, I'm not sure if there's ever it always feels like there's somebody doing something like to meet a need. Being a business person, I always think that it's nice to try and support young entrepreneurial kids through their journey. So if I was ever to start a charity, I would definitely be looking at kind of some sort of fund that assisted maybe underprivileged areas or schools on that entrepreneurial journey. I'm not sure it's really quite qualifies as a traditional charity, but I quite like the thought of that sort of, you know, legacy and assisting people. So you're not just, you know, wealthy people or people that are exposed to a different type of education, you know, that can come. Because I think a lot of the good entrepreneurs and people actually come from backgrounds where they've had a school of life and the rest of it, and that actually that would assist in the economy, which would then grow the economy of the UK, which then kind of supports the charities in its own right.
Yeah, it indicates the need for things like food banks. If everybody was able to earn more, to have more opportunities, I mean, that's what we're looking at eventually. Is you know, is looking at the lessening the need of people, so that. I wish I could say that I'm going to be out of work one day. It would be great. I
guess that would be my dream, if you like, to basically eradicate the need for what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't think, sadly, I'll ever achieve it, but it would be good to do that.
That's brilliant.
So yeah, and we do a little bit of support for Recycle, who basically take the bicycles that are locked up against handrails and railings all over the UK. They come along and they cut them, and then obviously the council just throw them away. But now Recycle take them, they prepare them all, and then they ship them to places where people in the UK as well as abroad, wherever people need to have transportation. Right. So it's a charity, and they repair the bikes basically and stick them Recycle. So we support that a little bit. I like that. It ticks my bicycle historics. I love riding my bike, still ride it now. So it's nice to see that they're not all getting thrown away. But yeah, I would do something that I'd feel like it was, from a business point of view, it's always very much like, what's the problem? How do you fix the problem so that the medicine isn't required anymore? Yeah,
exactly. And that's really, I mean, unfortunately, like I said earlier, we're being used as sticking plasters. And one of the things that the NHS does is social prescribing, which is great. You've got this social prescriber who says to someone who goes into the doctors who's depressed, oh, you need to go to a group. Unfortunately, there's no funding for those groups to take the people that are being, you know, socially prescribed. And a lot of the time people look at things in isolation. They're not looking at it as a wraparound thing. So hopefully my new hub up at the cafe will look at things a bit more holistically, and who knows, we might even have a bike repair thing up there. You can come up and help. It'll be great.
Yes. All right. Well, that's really great, and I'd love to have you back on in like a year or two's time. See where you've got to.
See how many people are poisoned with my sandwiches. That'd be good.
Do reach out to that. I'll give you the leaflet, or I'll send you a link.
Lovely. That'd be great.
Thing. So just before we wrap up, how do people get hold of you, or is there a website or something?
So we're on social media. All of our things are Havens Community Hub, Havens Community Cars, Havens Happy Clubs, and Havens Food Cooperative. You type any of those into Google. They'll all lead to me. They all lead to me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming on today, and it's been really, really interesting. And good luck with all the really fantastic work that you do.
Thank you, my love. Cheers.
You're welcome. So, apart from the fact that we gave Paula a kind of elongated 60 seconds, if you like, I think it's really fantastic. Paula's got loads and loads to say about charities and the rest of it. But I think, as I said at the beginning in the intro, just needs to rein it in a little bit, make sure that all of her ideas that she's got are actually focused in on her actual ecosystem of charities. And then that franchising model is going to be really difficult for her to grow. But if she has it in, takes the right advice and looks at it in the right kind of manners, I think she'll do a really, really good job of that. And putting herself as a big personal brand is actually going to allow her seas of various other people that are going to be representing her across the UK to actually see what she's up to as an ambassador for the brand. So I hope you really enjoyed that content. I know it's a bit of a different one with a charity and the rest of it, but they do operate in the same kind of perimeters as normal businesses. So please go and give Paula some like. If you know anybody that needs to get in touch with her at all, just you've heard all the ways of getting in touch with us. So just put people in that direction. But if you want to come on the podcast and sit here and have a open and frank conversation, a bit of business mentoring, that kind of stuff, just go over to on our website, Matthew Cox with 2 T's, matthewcox.biz, fill in the form there, apply to be on the podcast. You can come on here and really we'll just learn something about your business, a little bit of advertising. You can have all the footage and the rest of it. And if you don't want to do that, the least you can do is give Paula some love. Hit that like button, let her know, comment in the comment section below, subscribe to the channel, all that sort of stuff, and that will get her out. And the least you're going to do is get her charity exposed. And as she says, it's charity. So why wouldn't you want to do that?